are the Readers Theater Group from Trinity Christian Academy.
And we are presenting
Chapter 9,
The Mock Turtle Story.
From Alice in Wonderland.
By Lewis Carroll.
You can't think how glad I am to see you again, you dear old thing.
Said the Duchess, as she tucked arm affectionately into Alice's, and they walked off together.
Alice was very glad to find her in such a pleasant temper, and thought to herself that perhaps it was only the pepper that had made her so savage when they met in the kitchen.
When I'm a Duchess,
She said to herself,
not in a very hopeful tone, though.
I won't have any pepper in my kitchen at all. Soup does very well without. Maybe it's always pepper that makes people hot-tempered.
She went on, very much pleased of having found out a new kind of rule.
And vinegar, that makes them sour. And chamomile, that makes them bitter. And barley sugar, and such things that make children sweet-tempered. I only wish people knew that. Then they wouldn't be so stingy about it, you know?
She had quite forgotten the Duchess by this time. It was a little startled to hear her voice so close to her ear.
You're thinking about something, my dear, and that makes you forget to talk. I can't tell you just now what the moral of that is, but I shall remember in a bit. Perhaps it hasn't one. Tut, child. Everything's got a moral if only you can find it.
and she squeezed herself up closer to Alice's side as she spoke.
Alice did not much like keeping so close to her. First, because the Duchess was very ugly.
And secondly, because she's exactly the right height to rest her chin on Alice's shoulder, and it was an uncomfortably sharp chin.
However, she did not like to be rude, so she bore it as well as she could.
The game's going on rather better now. 'Tis so, and the moral of that is, oh, 'tis a love that makes the world go round. Somebody said it's done by everybody minding their own business. Oh, well, it means much the same thing,
Said the Duchess, digging her sharp little chin into Alice's shoulder, as she added.
And the moral of that is, take care of the sense, and the sounds will take care of themselves. How fond she is of finding morals in things.
Alice thought to herself.
I dare say you're wondering why I don't put my arm around your waist. The reason is that I am doubtful about the temper of your flamingo. Shall I try the experiment? He might bite.
Alice cautiously replied, not feeling at all anxious to have the experiment tried.
Very true. Flamingos and mustard both bite. And the moral of that is, birds of a feather flock together. Only mustard isn't a bird. Right, as usual. What a clear way you have of putting things. It's a mineral, I think. Of course it is.
Said the Duchess, who seemed ready to agree to everything that Alice said.
There's a large mustard mine near here, and the moral of that is, the more there is of mine, the less there is of yours. Oh, I know.
Exclaimed Alice. We're not intended to this last remark.
It's a vegetable. It doesn't look like one, but it is. I quite agree with you. And the moral of that is, be what you would seem to be, or if you like to put it more simply, never imagine yourself not to be otherwise than what it might appear to others, that what you were or might have been was not otherwise than what you had been, would have appeared to them to be otherwise. I think I should understand that better.
Alice said very politely.
If I had it written down, but I can't quite follow it as you say it. That's nothing to what I could say if I chose.
The Duchess replied in a pleased tone.
Pray, don't trouble yourself to say it any longer than that. Oh, don't talk about trouble. I make you a present of everything I says yet. A cheap sort of present.
Thought Alice.
I'm glad they don't give birthday presents like that.
But she did not venture to say it out loud.
Thinking again? I have a right to think.
Said Alice sharply, for she's beginning to feel a little worried.
Just about as much right as pigs have to fly. And the
But
book.
here, to Alice's great surprise, the Duchess's voice died away, even in the middle of her favorite word, moral.
And the arm that was linked to hers began to tremble. Alice looked up, and there stood the Queen in front of her, with her arms folded, frowning like a thunderstorm.
Fine day, Your Majesty.
Now, I give you fair warning. Either you or your head must be off, and that about half no time. Take your choice.
The Duchess took her choice and was gone in a moment.
Let's go on with the game.
The Queen said to Alice. Alice was too much frightened to say a word, but slowly followed her back to the croquet ground.
The other guests had taken advantage of the Queen's absence and were resting in the shade. However, the moment they saw her, they hurried back to the game, the Queen merely remarking that the moment's delay would cost them their lives.
The Queen never left off quarreling with the other players and shouting,
Off with his head!
or,
Off with her head.
Those whom she sentenced were taken into custody by the soldiers, who of course had to leave off archers to do so, so that by in a half an hour there were no archers left, and all the players except the king, the queen, and Alice were in custody and sentenced under execution.
Then the queen left off, quite out of breath, and said to Alice,
Have you seen the mock turtle yet?
I don't even know what a mock turtle is.
It's the thing mock turtle soup is made from.
I never saw one or heard of one.
Come on then, I shall take you to him, and you shall hear his history.
As they walked off together, Alice heard the king say in a low voice to the company generally,
You are all pardoned,
That's a good thing.
she said to herself, for she felt quite unhappy at the number of the executions the queen had ordered.
They very soon came upon a griffin lying fast asleep in the sun.
Ah, you lazy thing! Take this young lady to see the mock turtle and to hear his history. I must go back and see it after some executions I have ordered.
And she walked off, leaving Alice alone with the griffin. Alice did not quite like the look of the creature, but thought on the whole that it'd be quite as safe as to stay with it, as to go after the savage queen. So she waited.
The griffin sat up and rubbed its eyes. Then it watched the queen till she was out of sight. Then it chuckled.
What fun!
What is the fun?
Why, she. It's all her fancy, that. They never executes nobody, you know. Come on.
They had not gone far before they saw the mock turtle in the distance, sitting sad and lonely on a ledge of rock. And as they came near, Alice heard him sighing as if his heart would break. She pitied him deeply. What is his sorrow?
She asked the griffin, and the griffin replied very nearly in the same words as before.
It's all his fancy, that. He hasn't got no sorrow, you know. Come on.
So they walked up to the mock turtle, who looked at them with large eyes full of tears, but said nothing.
This here young lady, she wants for to know your history. She do.
I'll tell her. Sit down, both of you, and don't speak a word till I have finished.
So they sat down, and nobody spoke for some minutes. Alice thought to herself, I don't see how he can ever finish if he doesn't begin. But she waited patiently.
Once, I was a real turtle.
These words were followed by a long silence. Broken only by the constant, heavy sobbing of the mock turtle. Alice was very nearly getting up and saying,
Thank you, sir, for your interesting story.
but she couldn't help think there must be more to come. So she sat still and said nothing.
When we were little,
The mock turtle went on at last, more calmly though, still sobbing a little now and then.
we went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise.
Why'd you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one?
We called him Tortoise because he taught us. Really, you are very dull.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself for asking such a simple question.
Said the griffin. Then they both sat silent and looked at poor Alice, who felt ready to sink into the earth. At last, the griffin said to the mock turtle,
Drive on, old fella. Don't be all day about it.
And he went on in these words.
Yes, we went to school in the sea, though you mayn't believe it.
I never said I didn't.
You did.
Hold your tongue!
We had the best of educations. In fact, we went to school every day.
I've been to a day school too. You needn't be as proud of all that.
With extras
Yes, we had French and music.
and washing.
Certainly not.
Ah, then yours truly wasn't a good school. Now at ours, they had at the end of the bill, French, music, and washing. Extra.
You couldn't have wanted it much, living at the bottom of the sea.
I couldn't afford to learn it. I only took the regular course.
What was that?
Reeling and writhing, of course, to begin with. And then the different branches of arithmetic. Ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision.
I've never heard of uglification before. What is it? The griffin lifted up both its paws in surprise.
What? You've never heard of uglifying? You know what to beautify is, I suppose.
Yes, it means to make anything prettier.
Well then, if you don't know what to uglify is, you are a simpleton.
Alice did not feel encouraged to ask any more questions about it. So she turned to the mock turtle and said,
What else have you learned?
Well, there was mystery.
The mock turtle replied, counting out the subjects on his flappers.
Mystery, ancient and modern, with geography, then drawing. The drawing master was an old conjurer. He used to come once a week. He taught us drawing, stretching, and fainting in coils.
What was that like?
Well, I cannot show you, for I am too stiff, and the Griffin never learned it.
Hadn't time. I went to class with Master, though. He was an old crab. He was.
I never went to him. He taught laughing in grief, they used to say.
So he did. So he did.
said the Griffin, sighing in his turn.
How many hours a day did you do lessons?
10 the first, 9 the next, and so on.
What a curious plan.
That's the reason they're called lessons, because they lesson from day to day.
This was quite a new idea to Alice, and she thought it over before she made her next remark. So the 11th was a holiday.
Of course it was.
And how'd you manage on the 12th?
That's enough about lessons.
Interrupted the Griffin in a decided tone.
I think it's high time to move on to something else.